I always keep my closet neat, everything has its place. Shirts hung precisely an inch apart, shoes aligned at perfect angles, and, at the back, nestled in the shadows of old military fatigues, my family knife. The knife, an heirloom passed down through generations, was not just a tool, it was a symbol, a connection to the past, a piece of history forged in steel. But this morning, as I reached into the closet to retrieve a tie for work, something felt off. My hand brushed against the empty spot where the knife should have been. I paused, frowning, and pushed the hangers aside. Nothing. The knife was gone. My heart skipped a beat. I stepped back, my mind racing. Had I misplaced it? That seemed impossible. I kept it in the same spot for years, ever since my father gave it to me on my 18th birthday with a solemn expression and a brief, meaningful nod. It wasn't just something you casually misplace. Emma! I called out, my voice echoing down the hall. Have you seen the knife? Emma, my wife, was in the kitchen, the sound of her humming softly over the clatter of dishes. She appeared in the doorway, a curious smile on her face. What knife? She asked, wiping her hands on a towel. You know, the one from my closet. The family knife. I was trying to keep my voice steady, but the unease was creeping in. Something wasn't right. Emma tilted her head slightly, her smile never wavering. I haven't seen it, she said casually, then added, maybe you moved it and forgot? I shook my head. I wouldn't forget something like that. Well, things sometimes go missing. It'll turn up, she said with a shrug, before turning back to the kitchen. I watched her go, unease settling in my stomach like a heavy stone. Something about her reaction didn't sit right with me. She was too calm, too dismissive. I knew Emma well, or at least I thought I did, and this was not how she usually reacted when I was upset. But I pushed the thought aside, chalking it up to my own anxiety. The day passed in a blur. I couldn't focus at work, my mind constantly drifting back to the empty spot in my closet. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just a misplaced object, but the nagging doubt wouldn't leave me. When I got home that evening, Emma was waiting for me, dressed a little too nicely for a quiet night in. She had on the red dress I bought her for our anniversary last year, the one that always made me feel like the luckiest man alive. Let's go out for dinner, she said, her eyes sparkling. It's been a while since we had a date night. I hesitated, caught off guard by the sudden suggestion. I'm not really in the mood, I replied, the day's unease still clinging to me. Emma's smile faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered, stepping closer and placing a hand on my chest. Come on, it'll be good for us. We've both been stressed lately. Let's just forget about everything for a while and enjoy ourselves. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to shake off the strange feeling that had been following me all day and just enjoy the evening with my wife. So, I agreed. We went to our favorite restaurant, a cozy little place that served the best steaks in town. Emma was charming, laughing at my jokes and holding my hand across the table. For a few hours, I managed to push aside the worries that had been gnawing at me and just enjoy the moment. But when we got home, the unease returned with a vengeance. I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in bed next to Emma, who drifted off easily. My mind kept circling back to the knife, to Emma's odd behavior, to the strange feeling that something was terribly wrong. The next morning, everything came crashing down. I was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, when the doorbell rang. Emma was upstairs getting dressed, so I answered it. 2 police officers stood on the porch, their faces serious. Mr. Harrison, one of them asked. Yes? I replied, a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. We need you to come with us, the officer said. There's been an incident. What kind of incident? I asked, my voice shaky. The officer glanced at his partner before answering. A man was found dead last night. We found your knife at the scene. I stared at him, the world tilting around me. What? That's impossible. I've been home all night. The officer's eyes narrowed. The knife had your fingerprints on it. A cold wave of fear washed over me. This couldn't be happening. There's been a mistake, I said, but my voice was hollow, lacking conviction. Please, Mr. Harrison, come with us, the officer repeated, his tone firm. At that moment, Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale. What's going on? She asked, her voice trembling. They think I killed someone, I said, barely able to comprehend the words coming out of my mouth. Emma's eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in her gaze. Was it fear? Guilt? But before I could make sense of it, she was rushing down the stairs, wrapping her arms around me. This is ridiculous, she said to the officers, her voice strong. My husband has been home all night. He wouldn't hurt a fly. The officers exchanged glances, but they weren't swayed. We just need to ask him some questions, the second officer said. He'll be back soon. I felt like I was in a nightmare, being led away from my own home, from my wife, with no idea what was happening or how I had become the prime suspect in a murder investigation. At the station, they questioned me for hours, going over every detail of the night before, trying to trip me up, to make me confess to something I didn't do. But I held firm. I knew I was innocent. I knew there had to be some explanation. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they showed me the evidence. A surveillance video from a nearby street camera showed a woman, my wife, meeting the victim late at night, the knife in her hand. She had set me up. She had killed this man and planted the knife at the scene, ensuring my fingerprints were on it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted with my life, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But before I could fully process the horror of it all, the door to the interrogation room burst open, and a new figure stepped in, a man I recognized. It was Robert, a close friend of Emma's, someone I had always been wary of, though I could never pinpoint why. I have information, Robert said, his voice steady. About Emma. She's been planning this for months. I was her lover, too, and I know everything. The room fell silent, and I stared at him, my world collapsing around me. Robert told the detectives everything, how Emma had plotted to kill her lover, steal his money and valuables, and frame me for the crime. He showed them texts, emails, and recordings. He even had a video of Emma confessing her plan to him. It was all there, laid out in front of me like a twisted puzzle, the pieces falling into place. I had been a pawn in Emma's game, a means to an end. And if it hadn't been for Robert's intervention, I would have gone to prison for a crime I didn't commit. As the officers left the room to start the process of arresting Emma, I sat there, numb, unable to move or speak. My life, my marriage, everything I thought I knew had been shattered in an instant. Robert sat down across from me, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry, he said, though his words felt hollow. I didn't know how to stop her until now. I looked up at him, the betrayal still raw in my chest. Why now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated before answering. Because I realized she would never stop. She would have done the same to me eventually. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could ever trust anyone again. But one thing was certain, Emma was gone from my life, and she had taken the last remnant of my trust with her. As I was released from custody, I walked out of the station into the cold morning air, my mind reeling from the events of the last 24 hours. The future seemed uncertain, but one thing was clear, I had narrowly escaped a nightmare, and now, I had to rebuild my life from the ashes of a marriage built on lies. And as I stood there, staring at the rising sun, I made a silent vow to myself, never again would I let someone get that close. Never again would I be caught off guard. From now on, I would trust no one. I can still smell the stale coffee from the police station as I walk through the front door of my house. The silence that greets me is suffocating, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. It feels as though I've stepped into a different world, one that looks the same but is irrevocably changed. My home, once a sanctuary, now feels like a trap, each shadow a reminder of the lies that had been hiding in plain sight. I drop my keys on the kitchen counter, the metallic clink echoing in the emptiness. The sound makes me flinch. I'm not supposed to be here, I think. Emma should be here. But she isn't. Not anymore. Before I can get lost in the maze of my thoughts, the doorbell rings. The sound is sharp, insistent. My pulse quickens, the panic from earlier flaring up again. I'm not ready to face anyone. Not yet. The doorbell rings again, more urgent this time. I force myself to move, each step heavier than the last. When I open the door, I find myself staring into the eyes of someone I hadn't expected, Detective Karen Wallace. Her sharp features are softened by concern, but there's a steely determination in her gaze. She's tall, with a presence that commands attention, even when she's dressed in casual clothes instead of her usual suit. "Mr. Harrison," she says, her voice calm, almost soothing. "May I come in?" I step aside, too exhausted to protest. "You're not here to take me back, are you?" I ask, trying to mask the anxiety in my voice with a weak attempt at humor. She gives me a small, tight-lipped smile. "No, nothing like that. I wanted to talk to you off the record. There are some things you need to know, things that didn't come up in the official questioning." I lead her into the living room, where she takes a seat on the edge of the couch, sitting upright, her hands clasped in her lap. I collapse into the armchair across from her, the weight of the past few days pressing down on me. "There's more to this than just what Emma did," Wallace begins, her tone measured. "We've been investigating her for some time, longer than you know. She's been involved in other schemes, but this is the first time it's escalated to murder." I stare at her, struggling to comprehend. "You knew? You knew what she was capable of, and you didn't stop her?" Wallace looks down, her expression conflicted. "We had our suspicions, but we didn't have enough evidence to act until now. Emma was clever. She covered her tracks well. We were close, but we needed something solid, something that would stick in court." "Solid?" I repeat, incredulous. "She almost ruined my life, and you were waiting for something solid?" Wallace sighs, leaning forward slightly. "I understand how you feel, Mr. Harrison, but you have to understand that we couldn't just go after her without concrete evidence. Robert's confession and the video he provided changed everything. Without him, we might never have caught her." I shake my head, anger and frustration bubbling up. "And what about Robert? You're just going to let him walk free? He was part of it too." "That's complicated," Wallace says, choosing her words carefully. "Robert is cooperating fully with the investigation. He claims he was manipulated by Emma, that he didn't realize how far she was willing to go until it was too late. The DA is considering a deal, but that's not set in stone." I'm about to respond when there's a sudden, frantic knocking at the door. Wallace and I exchange a glance before I stand up to answer it. My heart races again, but this time, it's not fear, it's something else, something darker. When I open the door, I'm met by a woman I barely recognize at first. She's in her late 30s, her blonde hair disheveled, her eyes wild with panic. Her clothes are wrinkled, as if she's been wearing them for days. She pushes past me before I can react, storming into the house. "Where is she?" she demands, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and desperation. "Where's that bitch?" "Who are you?" I ask, stepping in front of her as she moves toward the living room. Wallace stands up, watching the scene unfold with a practiced calm. "I'm Claire," the woman snaps, glaring at me as if I should know exactly who she is. "Emma's sister." "Where is she?" The name clicks into place, but I'm too stunned to respond. I hadn't even known Emma had a sister. She had always been so secretive about her family, claiming they were estranged, that they didn't keep in touch. "Emma's not here," I finally manage, my voice tight. "She's been arrested." Claire's eyes widen in shock, and for a moment, she looks like she's about to collapse. Wallace steps forward, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Claire, why don't you sit down?" Wallace suggests gently, guiding her toward the couch. Claire sinks into the cushions, her hands shaking. "I knew she was trouble," she mutters, more to herself than to us. I knew it, but I never thought she'd go this far. Wallace takes a seat beside her, her voice softening. Claire, we need to know everything you can tell us about Emma. Anything that might help us understand why she did this. Claire looks up, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a mixture of guilt and sorrow. She was always different, she begins, her voice barely above a whisper. Even when we were kids, Emma was always looking for a way to get ahead, to make things easier for herself. But after our parents died, she changed. She became colder, more calculating. I listen, feeling like an outsider in my own home. This woman, this sister, knows more about my wife, my ex-wife, I remind myself, than I ever did. The realization is like a punch to the gut. Why didn't you warn me? I ask, the words slipping out before I can stop them. Why didn't you try to stop her? Claire's eyes fill with tears, and she wipes them away angrily. You think I didn't try? I warned her, I begged her to stop before she did something she couldn't take back. But Emma didn't care. She was too far gone, too obsessed with getting what she wanted, no matter who she had to hurt. Wallace leans in, her tone gentle but firm. Claire, do you know if Emma was working with anyone else? Did she have any other connections we should know about? Claire shakes her head, her expression vacant. I don't know. She never told me much, but she did mention someone once, a name. Jacob, I think. She said he was helping her with something big, but she wouldn't tell me what. Jacob, Wallace repeats, her brow furrowing. Do you have any idea who he is? Claire shakes her head again. No, just that he's dangerous. Emma said he was someone you don't cross, but that's all I know. Wallace stands up, pulling out her phone. I need to make a call. Excuse me for a moment. As Wallace steps out of the room, I sit down across from Claire, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. I want to ask her more, to demand answers, but I can see the exhaustion in her eyes, the toll this is taking on her. Claire, I begin, choosing my words carefully, why did you come here? She looks up at me, her eyes filled with a sadness that I recognize all too well. Because I didn't know where else to go, she admits. I thought maybe you could help me understand why she did this. I nod slowly, understanding her need for closure, even though I'm struggling to find my own. We'll figure it out, I say, though the words feel hollow. Wallace returns, her expression grim. We've put out an alert for this Jacob, but it's going to take time to track him down. In the meantime, we need to keep you both safe. Claire, I suggest you stay somewhere secure. Mr. Harrison, I'd recommend the same. I'm not leaving, Claire says stubbornly, a fire in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. This is my mess too, and I'm not running away from it. Wallace looks at me, her expression unreadable. And you, Mr. Harrison? I hesitate, then shake my head. I'm not leaving either. I need to be here, to understand what happened. I can't just walk away from this. Wallace sighs, clearly not thrilled with our decisions, but she doesn't argue. Fine, she says, but I'll have an officer posted outside, just in case. She turns to leave, but before she goes, she pauses at the door, glancing back at me. We'll find Jacob, she says, her voice firm. And we'll get to the bottom of this. As the door closes behind her, I'm left alone with Claire, the weight of everything that's happened pressing down on us both. The silence stretches on, filled with all the questions we can't yet answer. I don't know what the next few days will bring, but I do know one thing, the truth about Emma is only beginning to unravel, and whatever comes next, it won't be easy. But I have to see it through, no matter the cost. The next morning, I wake up to the sound of Claire moving around in the kitchen. The house feels different with someone else here, less empty, but not in a comforting way. The memories of last night, the revelations, the fear, are still fresh in my mind, and I wonder how I'll face the day. But I don't have much choice. I drag myself out of bed and head downstairs, finding Claire already at the table with a cup of coffee. She looks as exhausted as I feel, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She doesn't acknowledge me when I walk in, just stares into her cup as if the answers to all her problems might be hiding at the bottom. "Morning," I say, though it doesn't feel like one. "Morning," she mutters, barely glancing up. Her hands are trembling slightly as she takes a sip of coffee. I sit across from her, the silence between us heavy. "Did you sleep at all?" I ask, already knowing the answer. "Not really," she admits, her voice flat. "Too much on my mind." "Yeah," I respond, understanding all too well. I pour myself a cup of coffee, the familiar routine grounding me a bit. "We need to figure out what to do next." "Do we?" she asks, her tone bitter. "What's left to do?" "Emma's in jail. She can't hurt anyone anymore." "She's not the only threat," I remind her, thinking of Jacob, whoever he is. "We still don't know who this guy is or what he might do." Claire sighs, rubbing her temples. "I know, but I'm just so tired of all this. I spent years trying to protect Emma from herself, and now I don't even know who she is anymore. It's like everything I thought I knew was a lie." I don't know how to respond to that. I'm in the same boat, but hearing it from someone who's known Emma longer makes it feel even more real. The person we both thought we knew never existed, and we're left picking up the pieces. Before I can say anything, there's a knock at the door. Claire and I exchange a glance, the tension in the air thickening. We're both on edge, every sound a potential threat. I stand up slowly, trying to calm the sudden rush of adrenaline. "Stay here," I tell Claire, my voice low. She nods, but I can see the fear in her eyes. I move toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I take a deep breath before opening it, expecting the worst. But it's not what I expect at all. Standing on the porch is a man I don't recognize. He's tall and lanky, with a nervous energy that makes him look younger than he probably is. He's dressed in jeans and a hoodie, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. His eyes dart around, never settling on one spot for too long. "Can I help you?" I ask, keeping my voice steady. "Are you Daniel Harrison?" he asks, his voice a bit shaky. "Yeah," I reply cautiously. "Who are you?" He glances over his shoulder, as if checking to see if anyone's watching. "My name's Max Tanner." I need to talk to you about Emma." The mention of her name sends a chill down my spine. "What about her?" Max shifts on his feet, clearly uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" "It's not safe to talk out here." I hesitate, glancing back at Claire, who's watching us from the kitchen. She gives me a questioning look, and I shrug slightly before turning back to Maximum. "Fine, come in." He steps inside, looking around nervously as if he expects something to jump out at him. I lead him into the living room, where Claire joins us, still clutching her coffee cup like it's a lifeline. "This is Claire," I say, introducing her. "Emma's sister." Max nods at her, though he looks even more uneasy. "Hi," he says quietly, before turning back to me. "I don't have much time. Jacob's looking for me. He thinks I know too much." The mention of Jacob makes my heart skip a beat. "You know Jacob?" Max nods quickly. "Yeah, I used to work with him. Emma brought me in on one of their jobs a while back. I didn't know how deep they were into this until it was too late." Claire leans forward, her interest piqued. "What kind of jobs?" "Everything," Max replies, his voice trembling. "Fraud, theft, blackmail. Jacob runs a crew, and Emma was one of his best. They scammed a lot of people, made a lot of money. But Emma, she wanted more. She was always pushing for bigger scores, taking bigger risks. That's why Jacob started to distrust her." "And you?" I ask. "Why are you here?" Max swallows hard, glancing around the room again. "Because I know what Jacob's planning. He's going to get rid of anyone who could testify against him, and that includes you too. Emma might be out of the picture, but Jacob's still dangerous. He's already sent people after me. I barely got away." The room feels like it's closing in around us. Claire pales, and I feel a knot of fear tighten in my stomach. What does he want? I ask, trying to keep my voice calm. Max hesitates, then pulls something out of his pocket, a small flash drive. This, he says, holding it up. It's all the evidence I have on Jacob and his crew. Bank records, emails, everything. Emma gave it to me before she got caught. She said it was insurance in case Jacob turned on her. I stare at the flash drive, my mind racing. Why are you giving this to us? Because I'm done running, Max says, his voice cracking. I can't do this anymore. I've been looking over my shoulder for months, and I'm tired. If you give this to the police, maybe they can finally take Jacob down. Maybe we can all get out of this alive. Claire takes a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reaches out for the flash drive. Why didn't Emma use this herself? She asks. Max looks at her, guilt written all over his face. Because she didn't trust anyone, not even me. She thought she could handle Jacob on her own, but she underestimated him. Now she's in jail, and Jacob's still out there, cleaning up loose ends. I take the flash drive from Claire, feeling its weight in my hand. This could be the key to ending all of this, to finally getting justice for what Emma's done. But it also puts a target on our backs, and I'm not sure we're ready for that. We need to get this to Detective Wallace, I say, making the decision. She'll know what to do with it. Max nods, relief washing over his face. Good. I'll come with you. I can't stay out here on my own anymore. Jacob's too close. We move quickly, the urgency of the situation pressing down on us. As we head for the door, I catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow moving outside the window. My heart skips a beat, and I freeze. Wait, I whisper, holding up a hand to stop the others. Claire and Max exchange worried glances, but they stay silent. I inch toward the window, careful not to make any noise. When I peek outside, my blood runs cold. There's a man standing just beyond the front yard, half hidden behind a tree. He's tall, muscular, with a menacing presence that sends a jolt of fear through me. He's watching the house, his eyes scanning the windows as if he's looking for something, or someone. Jacob! I recognize him instantly, even though I've only seen him in the grainy surveillance footage Detective Wallace showed me. There's no mistaking the look in his eyes, the cold, calculating stare of a man who won't hesitate to kill. He's here, I whisper, my voice barely audible. Claire's face drains of color, and Max looks like he's about to collapse. What do we do? Max asks, his voice shaking. We can't stay here, I reply, thinking fast. We need to get to Wallace, but we have to be careful. He's watching the house. I motion for them to follow me, leading them toward the back door. We move quietly, every creak of the floorboard sounding like a gunshot in the silence. My heart is pounding so loudly in my ears that I can barely think. When we reach the back door, I peek outside, scanning the yard for any sign of Jacob's men. It looks clear, but I don't trust it. We need to move fast. Okay, I say, turning to the others. We're going to make a run for the car. Stay low, and don't look back. Got it? They both nod, though I can see the fear in their eyes. I take a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Then, without another word, I push open the door and lead the way. We sprint across the yard, keeping low to the ground, the adrenaline pumping through our veins. Every step feels like it takes an eternity, but we finally reach the car. I fumble with the keys, my hands shaking, before finally getting the door open. Get in! I hiss, and they scramble inside. I jump into the driver's seat, starting the engine just as I see movement at the edge of the yard. Jacob and his men are closing in, their dark figures moving quickly through the shadows. Go, go, go! Max shouts, his voice high with panic. I don't need to be told twice. I slam my foot on the gas, the tires screeching as we tear out of the driveway. I don't dare look back, but I can feel the weight of their gaze, like a noose tightening around my neck. We speed through the streets, the city a blur around us. My only focus is on getting to Wallace, on putting as much distance between us and Jacob as possible. The flash drive feels like it's burning a hole in my pocket, a constant reminder of the danger we're in. But even as we race through the night, I know this isn't over. Jacob won't stop until he gets what he wants, and that means we're running out of time. The flash drive might be our only chance, but it's also our greatest risk. And in this deadly game, one wrong move could cost us everything. The car races through the dimly lit streets, the city a blur of lights and shadows around us. Claire is in the back seat, her hand gripping the edge of the seat as if she might fall off. Max is beside me, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, but I can see the fear etched on his face in the rearview mirror. The weight of the flash drive in my pocket feels heavier with every passing second, like a ticking time bomb. We don't speak. There's nothing to say. We all know what's at stake. I take a sharp turn, the tires screeching on the asphalt as I push the car to its limits. We're getting closer to the police station, but I can't shake the feeling that we're being followed. I glance in the rearview mirror again, half expecting to see Jacob's car tailing us, but the road behind us is empty. Are we clear? Max asks, his voice shaky. I don't know, I reply, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. But we can't slow down. Claire leans forward from the back seat, her voice tense. What happens when we get there? What if Jacob's already figured out where we're going? I don't have an answer. The plan has always been to get the flash drive to Wallace, to let the police take over, but now that we're so close, doubt is creeping in. If Jacob is as dangerous as Max says he is, there's no guarantee that getting to the station will be the end of it. But I push those thoughts aside. We have to keep moving. Finally, the police station comes into view, a beacon of safety, or at least it should be. I pull into the parking lot, the tires crunching on the gravel as I come to a stop. My heart is pounding in my chest as I turn off the engine, the silence that follows almost deafening. We're here, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. Max nods, but he doesn't move. Claire's hand is on the door handle, but she hesitates, glancing at me with an expression I can't quite read. What if this isn't enough? She asks quietly. It has to be, I reply, though I'm not sure if I believe it. We step out of the car, the cool night air hitting me like a slap in the face. The station is quiet, almost too quiet, but I tell myself it's just late, that we're safe here. Still, I can't shake the feeling of unease that's been growing since we left the house. As we approach the entrance, the door swings open and Detective Wallace steps out to greet us. She looks relieved to see us, but there's something in her eyes, something hard and unreadable, that makes me uneasy. You made it, she says, her tone brisk. Did you bring the drive? I nod, pulling the flash drive from my pocket and handing it to her. This is everything. Max says it has all the evidence you need. Wallace takes the drive, her expression unreadable as she turns it over in her hand. Good. This might be what we need to finally bring Jacob down. Might be? Claire echoes, her voice trembling. What do you mean, might be? Wallace meets her gaze, her face serious. Jacob is dangerous, Claire. He has connections, resources. This drive will help, but it's not a guarantee. We're dealing with someone who's been evading the law for years. I feel a knot tighten in my stomach. So what do we do now? Wallace looks at me, her eyes hard. We keep you safe. I've arranged for protection for all of you until we can be sure that Jacob is out of the picture. Protection? Max asks, his voice laced with fear. For how long? As long as it takes, Wallace replies, her tone leaving no room for argument. We can't afford to take any risks. I nod, though the thought of being under constant surveillance doesn't sit well with me. But what choice do we have? Jacob won't stop until he gets what he wants, and that means we're all targets. Wallace gestures for us to follow her inside. Let's get you all settled. We'll go over the evidence, and then we'll figure out our next steps. As we head inside, the tension in the air is palpable. Max sticks close to me, his eyes darting around the station as if expecting Jacob to jump out at any moment. Claire is quieter than usual, her face pale and drawn. I can't tell if it's fear or something else. We're led into a small, windowless room at the back of the station, where Wallace locks the door behind us. It's cramped, with a single table and a few chairs, but it's secure, and that's all that matters right now. Wallace sits down at the table, plugging the flash drive into a laptop she's brought with her. Let's see what we've got. As the files start to load, the room fills with a tense silence. Claire and Max take seats across from Wallace, but I remain standing, too restless to sit. My eyes are glued to the screen, watching as folder after folder appears, filled with documents, bank statements, and emails. This is it, Max says quietly, leaning forward. This is everything Jacob has been hiding. Wallace begins to click through the files, her expression growing more serious with each passing moment. This is good, she says, nodding to herself. This is very good. With this, we can tie Jacob to at least a dozen different crimes, maybe more. A sense of relief washes over me, but it's short-lived. I can't shake the feeling that something is still wrong, that we're missing something crucial. Then, just as Wallace is about to open another file, the door to the room swings open. I turn, expecting to see another officer, but instead, I'm met with a sight that freezes the blood in my veins. Emma. She's standing in the doorway, flanked by two officers, her face calm and composed, as if this were just another day. She looks at me, her expression unreadable, and then her gaze shifts to Wallace. "Hello, Karen," Emma says, her voice cool and detached. "I see you found my little insurance policy." Wallace stands up slowly, her eyes narrowing. "What the hell are you doing here, Emma? You're supposed to be in custody." Emma smiles, but it doesn't reach her eyes. "I'm afraid there's been a change of plans. You see, I'm not quite as helpless as you might think." Max jumps to his feet, his face pale. "What's going on? What are you doing here?" Emma's smile widens, and for the first time, I see the true extent of her deception. "Oh, maximum sweet, naive maximum. Did you really think I'd let you run off with that drive without having a backup plan?" Claire stands up too, her eyes wide with shock. "Emma, what are you talking about?" Emma steps into the room, the officers at her sides blocking the exit. "It was all a setup, Claire. All of it. From the moment I met Daniel, to the moment I got caught. It was all part of the plan. I feel like the ground is shifting beneath me." "What plan?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Emma looks at me, her expression almost pitying. "The plan to get rid of Jacob, of course. He was getting too powerful, too ambitious. I needed to take him down, but I couldn't do it alone. So, I played the victim, let myself get to court, and made sure you all led the police right to him. You used us," Claire says, her voice trembling with anger. "Of course I did," Emma replies coldly. "But it was necessary. And now, with Jacob out of the way, I can finally take control of what's rightfully mine." Wallace steps forward, her face hard. "You're not going anywhere, Emma. You're under arrest." Emma laughs, a sound that chills me to the bone. "You think so?" These officers here might disagree. One of the officers steps forward, pulling out his gun and aiming it at Wallace. "Sorry, detective." Orders from above. Wallace's eyes widen in shock. "What the hell are you doing?" "You're cops." "Not anymore," the officer says, his voice cold. "I can't believe what I'm seeing. Emma has played us all, turned everything we thought we knew upside down. And now, she's going to walk away from it all, leaving us to deal with the fallout. But I can't let that happen." Before I can fully think through my actions, I grab the laptop from the table and smash it against the wall, destroying the flash drive in the process. Sparks fly as the screen shatters, and the room erupts into chaos. "What the hell are you doing?" Emma screams, her calm facade finally cracking. "If I go down," I say, my voice shaking with rage, "you go down with me. No more games. The officers start to move, but Wallace pulls out her gun, holding them at bay. No one moves, she says, her voice deadly serious. For a moment, everything hangs in the balance. Then, in a sudden, shocking move, Claire lunges at Emma, tackling her to the ground. They struggle, but Claire's anger gives her strength, and she manages to pin Emma down. "You ruined everything," Claire shouts, tears streaming down her face. "You lied to us, you betrayed us." Emma struggles, but Claire doesn't let go. "You think this is over?" Emma hisses. "You think you can just walk away?" "No," Claire says, her voice breaking. "But I'm done letting you control me." Wallace steps forward, her gun still trained on the officers. "It's over, Emma. You've lost." Emma looks up at her, breathing heavily, her eyes wild with fury. "You think this changes anything? You think I'm the only one? There are more out there, more who will come after you. You'll never be safe, come after you." Doesn't flinch. "We'll take our chances." The officers are disarmed, and backup arrives quickly to secure the situation. Emma is handcuffed and led away, her threats echoing in my ears as she's taken out of the station. The weight of everything that's happened crashes down on me, and I sink into a chair, exhausted. Max is sitting across from me, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock. Claire stands off to the side, her face a mixture of anger and sorrow. The reality of what we've just been through is almost too much to process. Wallace walks over to me, her expression softening slightly. "You did the right thing," she says quietly. "Did I?" I ask, my voice hollow. "Or did I just make things worse?" Wallace shakes her head. "No. You stopped her. And that's what matters." But her words offer little comfort. "I've lost everything, my trust, my marriage, my sense of safety. And I'm not sure how to move forward from here." Claire steps forward, her eyes red from crying. "Daniel. I'm sorry. For everything." I look at her, seeing the pain in her eyes, but I can't bring myself to respond. There's too much between us now, too much that can't be undone. Without another word, Claire turns and walks out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Max stands up, looking at me with a mixture of guilt and sorrow. "I never wanted it to end like this," he says. "Neither did I reply, my voice barely above a whisper. Max hesitates, then nods and walks away, leaving me alone in the small, windowless room. The silence is deafening, the weight of everything that's happened pressing down on me. In the end, there's no victory here, no sense of closure. Just the cold reality that the people I trusted most betrayed me, and I was left to pick up the pieces. And as I sit there, alone, I realize that the worst part of all is the hatred I feel, not just for Emma, but for myself. For being so blind, so naive. For letting her deceive me for so long. I don't know where to go from here, how to rebuild the life that's been shattered. But one thing is clear, nothing will ever be the same again. And as I leave the station, stepping into the cool night air, I know that the person I was before this nightmare started is gone. All that's left is the shadow of the man I used to be, and a future that I can barely bring myself to face. But I walk forward anyway, because there's nothing else I can do.